Every division's champion has that one contender that's just an absolute nightmare matchup for them that they would try to avoid at all costs. And today I'm going to bring you guys who that person is in every division. Some of these are kind of obvious. Some of them are a little more like head scratchers. So you're going to have to bear with me as I break them down. Without further ado, let's start this video off. Alexandre Pantoja, the champion of the Flyweight division. This dude has already ran through most of his division. So, not the easiest guy to find actual, difficult matchups for. But I actually didn't have to look that far. It's Steve Erceg. This guy arguably just beat him in his last fight. And should probably be champion right now. So, I feel like I don't need to explain much here. You look at the rest of the division. Most of it are people that Pantoja's already beaten, if not multiple times. The only people up towards the top that he hasn't beaten are the likes of, Kara France, who I think Erceg is going to beat. You got Mokaev, who I don't see having the skills to beat Pantoja or the gas tank. And Tatsuro Taira just entered that top 5, but he's still a little too green for me to say that Alexandre Pantoja is really going to have any problems with him. So, plain and simple, Steve Erceg should arguably champion right now. Bantamweight division, Sean O'Malley, incredible striker. It's really difficult to find anybody to match him on the feet there. And, we didn't get to see much of his wrestling against the likes of, Aljamain Sterling. But we had showed pretty good defense against Petr Yan. And if he can just knock them out before they get to take him down, then it's not even a big deal in the first place. And so, because of the performances against the guys like Sterling and whatnot, I don't want to just go straight for a wrestler like a Marab or a Cejudo. Feels a little too obvious, a little too easy. Plus, those guys are really short. And I think O'Malley's height and length would offer a bit too many problems there. And in terms of just somebody who can straight up strike with him, like, say, a Sandhagen, I don't know if, in a 1-for-1 tit-tat battle, if anybody really outstrikes O'Malley in this division. And Sandhagen, I don't think, is necessarily as stellar enough of a grappler to really take advantage of that against someone like O'Malley, who's probably drilling anti-wrestling all the time. So who do I go with? Well, it's got to be somebody who's fast enough to, close that distance on his long arms. Somebody who can, have some sting in their shots and maybe make him, kind of think twice before he enters that pocket. And somebody who does offer a threat on the ground, even if they don't get him to the ground. Somebody with some sort of grappling, submission, offensive threat. Who else could this be? None other than Deiveson Figueiredo, former Flyweight champion. We've seen him perform incredibly ever since he's moved up from Flyweight to Bantamweight. His power hasn't quite translated the same, but he doesn't hit soft. And he's still got quite a bit of speed. The way he throws his punches, the way he moves around the octagon, very fast. We saw in that fight against Cody Garbrandt. I know Garbrandt doesn't have the greatest of freaking grappling and submission defense abilities, but don't tell me you can't see in your head Figueiredo getting some sort of backpack on O'Malley and just threatening that RNC. I'm not saying he gets it, but, he's going to be right there. I think, his size difference here will actually play into his favor, because he's not going to be the smaller man trying to wrestle him. He's going to be the smaller man trying to, get into the pocket and dirty box with him. Kind of like a DC style, So, Deiveson Figueiredo is the biggest threat for Sean O'Malley in the Bantamweight division right now. Moving up Featherweight, Topuria. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it or play games on this one. It's Max Holloway, guys. This guy is arguably just hitting his prime and was already champion in the 2010s for years and years with multiple title defenses against the likes of, Jose Aldo, friggin' Brian Ortega, demolition job, Holloway's been putting on generational performances for at least a decade now. And I don't see... It doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. Topuria could be the guy to stop him, but you can't imagine Topuria chinning Holloway. Ilya is not a very high volume guy, so Holloway has a good opportunity to really put on a pace there. And I've never seen anybody really out wrestle, out grapple Holloway that well in the featherweight division, other than McGregor way back in the day. But that was when Holloway was still super young. So, very interesting matchup. I think Holloway's got what it takes, obviously. I don't think Topuria's grappling threat is like that crazy to Holloway. I don't think he'll be able to just hold him down and control him for entire rounds. I definitely don't see him getting a submission on him, and he's not knocking him out. So, good luck outpointing Holloway in a striking match. Lightweight, Islam Makhachev. This guy, absolute beast, very sound game, very difficult to find any holes that any contenders could exploit. However, shortly after the Dustin Poirier fight, his coach came out and said that they were worried about potentially having to fight Justin Gaethje because they think he's like the worst stylistic matchup for him in that division. And in a sense, I would have to agree. Gaethje's really good wrestling, got good anti-wrestling, I should say, and really good power on top of it. And so we've seen the way, Makhachev takes hard shots. Not the greatest. He doesn't go down, but, he wears the damage a lot, which is points on the board. And if Gaethje's anti-wrestling really does hold up, that could spell a lot of problems for Islam. However, I think Gaethje's complete lack of any real jiu-jitsu game is just way too obvious, way too much of a deficit for Islam to not be able to take advantage of. So the person that I opt for instead is Michael Chandler. Many of the same attributes and reasons as to why Justin Gaethje is a very big threat to Islam Makhachev, except Chandler is arguably more explosive, a bit more athletic, faster. He's a bit stockier, which will actually help him even more in those defensive grappling situations. And he survived that first RNC against Charles Oliveira in that first round and arguably 10-8'd him afterwards. So he doesn't just fold immediately when he gets into any sort of jiu-jitsu situations. So if Michael Chandler can come in with, a smart game plan and not fight like an absolute brain-dead meathead, just trying to entertain the fans, then I feel like he gives Islam the hardest fight in this division by far. Welterweight, Leon Edwards, mumble mouth himself. This guy, pretty solid fighter. Really, really well-rounded, really strong, really big for his weight class. Got good length on him. And, as a striker, wrestlers would seem to be his weakness, but he's taken out the two biggest wrestlers in his division already in Colby and Kamaru. So you have to start looking at all the different fundamentals to really figure out where he can have holes to be taken advantage of. You may look at someone like a Shavkat Rakhmonov, maybe not the strongest wrestler, but has such good submission offense and finishing ability that it could still offer Edwards some threat. But with the way he was just getting absolutely bopped by Jeff Neal in the boxing the whole time, not that Edwards is the greatest boxer, but I feel like that's something Leon could take advantage of. And I don't think Shavkat has good enough of wrestling or submission ability to really wrap Edwards up in anything the way he did against the Jeff Neal, or even really keep him on the ground for extended periods of time. This is definitely not Ian Gary after we saw that performance against MVP. So who do I pick? Well, Jack Della Maddalena. Edwards has been shown to not have, he's got a solid chin, but it's got its moments. It can be cracked. Nate Diaz showed us that. You throw JDM in that moment where in that fifth round with Edwards instead of Nate Diaz, he's getting finished. We've seen JDM pull out that nuclear option a few times now against Randy Brown and Gilbert Burns in that third round. And I think, like I was just saying, Leon Edwards' boxing is not his strongest point, and JDM can take really good advantage of that. He won't be afraid. I don't think he'll be afraid to get into the pocket, close that distance, prevent Edwards from using his kicks, and really just crowd him, pressure him really well. He's not going to be going for any takedowns, so I think that's going to kind of confuse Edwards as to why somebody's pressuring him but not shooting for takedowns. And he's not going to be, he'll have an idea of how to deal with it, but I think he won't be quite prepared for somebody in his face throwing shots the way JDM is fearlessly, because it's not like he's going to be trying to clinch him either. So that's my pick for welterweight against Leon Edwards. Middleweight, we got Dricus du Plessis. Arguably, maybe the least skilled champion out of all the ones we got right now. But that doesn't mean he's a pushover. The middleweight division is not exactly full of like the most talented people out there. So the talent pool isn't the greatest to put against him in the first place. But you look at like Sean Strickland may seem like the obvious pick here, given he has many of the similar reasons, such as Steve Erceg, as to why he would be the most difficult matchup for Dricus du Plessis. However, I wanted to highlight somebody else in this position. And looking at the rest of the division, I think du Plessis is going to beat Adesanya as well. I think it's a very bad stylistic matchup for Izzy. And then looking at the rest of the division, outside of Sean Strickland, I don't see many people who give du Plessis any problems. Like, Imavov is a worse version of Izzy. I feel like Cannonier is kind of old, and I don't feel like can really put the pace on du Plessis the way he'll be able to come back, the way du Plessis will be able to. Cannonier is pretty old, and I think du Plessis will be able to match any sort of pace that Cannonier would try to put on him. Vittori is Vittori, Dolidze is Dolidze, I don't feel like those need much explanation. So I had to get a little creative with this one and look outside of his own division, and I found Kamaru Usman. Why is this dude talking about fighting a welterweight still? Why am I hearing rumors of Kamaru Usman fighting Shavkat Rakhmonov? These are pissing me off. This dude should be at middleweight. He was like practically the same size as Khamzat Chimaev, taking a short notice fight at middleweight when Khamzat Chimaev had months and months and months to bulk properly and get to the right size for middleweight. Usman comes in on 2 weeks notice and practically matches him in size. Does way better than him in cardio, shows he still has good power, shows his striking translates up to the higher weight class, and his wrestling. Really, when I look at it, I almost feel like Usman is just a more skilled du Plessis. And I think the only thing that Usman would lack at this higher weight class is being quite as big as du Plessis. But I think he would have so much better wrestling technique and much cleaner striking, thanks to Trevor Whitman, that it would kind of just be a cakewalk for him. I feel like most of this division is kind of a cakewalk for Usman, save for Strickland and Izzy possibly, but they would never fight each other anyway, so that's not even a concern. So Kamaru Usman, go to middleweight, beat du Plessis. You can do it, man. I totally 100% believe in it. Light heavyweight, Alex Pereira. This dude's beat most of his division already too. Jamal Hill, Yuri Prochazka, Jan Blachowicz. These guys, outside of Jan Blachowicz, they're kind of getting just ran through like nothing. And again, there's an obvious pick here of Magomed Ankalaev, but when you look back at Ankalaev's record, there's not really much in the way that shows you he'd be that big of a wrestling threat to Pereira, other than those last 2 rounds against Jan Blachowicz. But that was only after he insisted on standing with Jan for 3 rounds and was getting pieced up and damaged heavy in those legs. And not for nothing, but it clearly showed us how well he handles leg kicks. So I don't really think Magomed's that big of a threat to Alex right now, especially, Magomed has 0 career submissions. I don't think Pereira's going to be the first. It's not going to be any of those people he already knocked out. Who else could it be? Jan Blachowicz in a rematch. I really think so. Jan fought Pereira the way you're supposed to fight him. He said fuck everything else and went for those takedowns and grappling in the first round, and dominated it more or less in the first round. Kept him controlled the entire time and took that round securely. And then, second and third round was a lot more striking. And yeah, you would say Alex won those rounds, but man, Jan was in there with him, going back and forth the entire time. He was not getting scared, not backing up super crazy. He was eating the shots really well. Wasn't getting crippled by leg kicks or anything. I mean, this dude, we put some respect on Blachowicz' name at 41. This dude is still insane, still a beast. That Glover Teixeira performance really, I still question what happened there to this day. But other than that, Jan has really had a really good track record as of late, and I mean, for what it's worth, he has never lost a rematch. So, not saying this changes it, but this would be a very interesting fight that I would like to see again at some point. Finally, heavyweight, Aspinall. We all know why it's Aspinall and not the other guy. Who could be a threat to Tom Aspinall? Honestly, this was the hardest one to find, in my opinion, because Tom Aspinall has beaten a lot of these guys very quickly when he does beat them, and in a variety of different ways that really shows, if you didn't think he could do that to somebody else, well, he just did it to this guy, so why couldn't he do it to someone else, The way he straight arm locked Volkov makes me think, well, why couldn't he just submit a Cyril Gane, who would presumably have even worse grappling than an Alexander Volkov? And the way he slept Pavlovich in a minute makes me think, why couldn't he sleep, Curtis Blades in the rematch now? Or who else? I don't know. Marcin Tybura, he already slept him. Sergey Spivak, he already slept him. I mean, it's not just that Aspinall is so good, but also that so much of this division is kind of ass. So, who else could it be? I mean, really, I feel like when you come to heavyweight, it's got to be who offers that knockout threat really well. And with Aspinall, you do have to consider, well, who can neutralize the grappling? Okay, neutralize the grappling, knockout threat. I know exactly who it's got to be. Derek Lewis. He can just stand up. And then 5th round, last minute, after getting dominated for 4 rounds and, 4 minutes, he'll just, boom, right on the chin. Hit him with that KFC overhand, that Popeye's power. And we'll have new heavyweight champion of the world. The knockout king himself will be king of the heavyweights. And, nature can go back to healing, guys. Derek Lewis will have the belt around his waist and his shorts off, running around the cage. Oh, man, that'd be such a sight to see. I would love it. All right. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe. And let me know which ones you guys think I got right, which ones you disagree with. And with that, stay violent.